It's recording now.
Howdy, I'm Hayden Mach, and the species I will be defending today is Alphitobius diaphanous, commonly known as the darkling beetle.
Howdy, my name is Alan. I will be defending the hornfly or Hematobia irritans irritans. Our debate project is which makes my meat cost more, and we'll be discussing whether Homotam irritans irritans the hornfly or Alphitobius diaphanous the darkling beetle makes our meat cost more.
Darkling beetles are members of the family Tenebrionde of the order Coleoptera and include over 20,000 distinct species. They average 2 to 19 millimeters in size and have a reddish to blackish coloration. They are scavengers primarily consuming plant matter such as grains. Darkling beetles primarily live on or in the ground, generally around rocks and crevices. They also tend to burrow into insulation and other farm materials. Darkling beetles follow a complete metamorphosis cycle, starting with lifespans as long as 2 years. Most larvae will molt a number of times before pupation into adults. After pupation, the mature adult beetle emerges. Darkling beetles, however, cause millions of damages to agriculture each year. They burrow into insulation and other common infrastructure used to raise livestock, causing damages to the infrastructure and also potentially causing loss of livestock due to poor insulation. They also are vectors of diseases like Salmonella, E. coli, and other common foodborne illnesses. This can lead to the death of livestock and contamination of meat products. Not only that, but when adult darkling beetles are consumed by livestock, it has shown an overall decrease in livestock growth as their exoskeleton is difficult for poultry to digest. This can cause digestive issues in poultry on top of reducing the poultry's ability to grow. Darkling beetle infestations have proven difficult to exterminate due to few natural predators and high resistance to insecticides than most pests. Overall, due to these factors, the overall cost of meat is greatly affected due to reduced meat yield, damages to infrastructure, disease, and high costs of extermination.
Hornflies are members of the Musidae of the order Diptera. The adult hornflies have brownish-gray or black bodies and are shiny, with slightly overlapping wings that are held flat over the abdomen. The body is 3.5 to 5 millimeters long. The head is small, brownish-red antennae which point downward. The thorax has two parallel stripes on the dorsal surface, just behind the head. Both male and female hornflies have piercing, sucking mouthparts and feed exclusively on blood. Hornflies have no major patterns on the backside of their abdomen. Cattle manure is the requisite habitat for larval development, and adults principally feed on cattle, with females leaving their host only long enough to lay eggs and fresh manure. The time required to complete the life cycle of a hornfly is between 10 and 20 days, depending on the temperature and time of year. The adult flies begin mating 3 to 5 days following emergence, and adult females start laying eggs 3 to 8 days after emergence. Because of hornfly feeding behavior and the sheer number of flies present on animals, cattle expend a great degree of energy in defensive behavior. This results in elevated heart and respiratory rates, reduced grazing time, decreased feeding efficiency, and reduced milk production in cows, which can result in decreased weaning weights. The hornfly is also a vector of several pathogens. The hornflies typically hibernate as pupa over the winter in most subtropical and temperate areas. Hornfly populations are a year-round nuisance to cattle. With comparatively lower populations in the winter, the hornfly is considered one of the most economically devastating pests of the beef cattle industry in the United States. It causes annual losses of between 700 million to 100 billion US dollars, with an additional 60 million US dollars spent annually on insecticides to control infestation.
Based on the information presented by the other debater, hornflies need fresh manure in order to lay eggs and reproduce effectively. If cattle manure is properly collected to ensure that it would limit the ability for hornflies to lay eggs and hatch, it would prevent a large amount of the issues they cause. Not only that, but hornflies also do not cause damage to infrastructure and do not present as much insecticide resistance compared to darkling beetles. Based on this, because of the infrastructure damage and insecticide resistance caused by darkling beetles, it would cause overall more damage to the farming practice and cause the greatest price increase in meat products.
In general, it is believed that you need 1 to 2 acres of land per cow, meaning that there would be numerous acres of land that would need to be checked and cleaned weekly if they were to follow the debater's suggestions. This would add to the already busy schedule, meaning more labor and more expenses related to the tools necessary for removal of waste products. Farmers already incur high costs related to controlling hornflies, including insecticides and labor for monitoring and management. These increased costs directly translate to higher production expenses, impacting the prices consumers pay. Darkling beetles can also be used in pig feeds and other livestock with no negative impacts as a protein source to replace soybean meals and convert less valuable byproducts of the agro-food and feed industry into valuable proteins and fat.
It is true that darkling beetle larvae are an effective protein source in many different livestock. However, adult darkling beetles are indigestible for many livestock and can even be poisonous if matured. Not only that, but lesser mealworms have defensive chemicals that deter consumption by livestock. Not only that, but darkling beetles will compete with poultry and can eat the grain they are fed, not only causing digestion issues in poultry, but also limiting the food available to them. This is coupled with the fact that most insecticides make it significantly more difficult to control populations.
While it may be true, many pesticides do not work effectively against the darkling beetle in the environment in which these insects thrive. Hen houses and grain silos are much easier to control as opposed to the open pasture of the hornfly. Darkling beetle has much easier prevention measures to administer, such as biocidal paint, whereas the hornfly, the prevention measures include being able to detect the hornflies and applying treatments when necessary. A decrease in cattle productivity due to hornfly infestations can lead to fewer animals available for slaughter, directly reducing meat supply and driving up prices due to increased demand relative to supply.
Darkling beetles ultimately cause millions of damages to agriculture each year. They cause damages to the infrastructure, but also potentially cause loss of livestock due to poor insulation. They are vectors of disease and can lead to the death of livestock and contamination of meat products. Not only that, but darkling beetles decrease livestock growth as their exoskeleton is difficult for poultry to digest. Darkling beetle infestations have proven difficult to exterminate due to few natural predators and higher resistance to insecticides than most pests. Overall, due to these factors, the overall cost of meat is greatly affected due to the reduced meat yield, damages to infrastructure, disease, and high costs of extermination.
The hornfly, scientifically known as Haematobia irritans, is highly significant pest for cattle on a global scale. This obligate blood-feeding ectoparasite primarily targets cattle and causes immense economic losses. In the United States alone, the annual economic impact of the hornfly infestations can run into hundreds of millions of dollars, with additional millions spent on insecticides to control their population. The hornfly's blood-feeding behavior induces stress and discomfort in cattle, leading to reduced weight gain in beef cattle and ultimately affecting overall productivity. The hornfly is also a vector of several pathogens and can vector several Staphylococcus bacteria. Effective control of hornflies necessitates substantial resources, including insecticides, fly traps, and increased labor for monitoring and management. The stress caused by fly infestations can also result in higher feed requirements for the same weight gain, thereby escalating feed costs. Moreover, the blood loss and stress from hornflies can lead to health issues such as anemia in livestock, contributing to the increased veterinary expenses and potential loss of animals, further impacting supply and prices.